Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed. We are exploring the question, can believers know whether or not they believe their own beliefs? So we're exploring specifically the idea that everything is relative to personal opinions and perspective, which means if you believe something is true, then it is true. And it's just as true as someone who actually has understanding or knowledge or expertise. If you believe you're a president and you're just a reality show actor, then you're president. You have just as much skill to be president. If you believe you know the nature of God, the divine, the nature of reality and the meaning of life and what happens when we die, because you believe it, then that's just as good as a philosopher who actually seeks to understand and verify rationally and in direct experience the answers to those questions. So, one of the most common beliefs of our age, or our zeitgeist, that if something seems true to you, then it is true to to whom it seems. So, a very common belief, and of course, if everything is a matter of a belief, why develop the discipline, the skill, the mastery of understanding? Why do real philosophy at all? Why do anything? If you automatically get a set of beliefs by virtue of being a human being raised in a belief clan family, having inherited beliefs from your parents who inherited it from theirs, learnt beliefs, well, it is inherited, but it is also learned. Also from your culture and religion and time and place of birth, then you have everything you need when you're a 4-year-old. Why learn anything? Why ever ask the questions about the true nature of divinity, the nature of intelligence, the meaning of life, where we came from, where we're going and what we're supposed to be doing here? All of these questions that are in the realm of philosophy, why ask them if you can just believe an answer to them, and that's just as legitimate as anything else. That's the way of thinking of our current age, leading people to be in a kind of conflict with their own desire to actually understand these questions. So belief functioning in opposition to reason and evidence. We're learning a lot about how that functions. Goal posting, moving the goals back, because if reason and evidence show your belief is not true, well, instead of changing your mind, you can just change the reason and evidence. There are a whole lot of techniques to changing the evidence or sabotaging the reason. Vomit, as some chatters do on our chat sometimes. Instead of actually listening to what we're saying or answering any questions, just vomit your own opinions that nobody asked for. That's a good way of distracting. Hey, try and take over. I'm the one asking the questions. Hey, distract with some whataboutisms. Attack reasoning itself. Or even start a fight. All these ways of distracting from reason or changing the evidence to keep the belief that we have learnt in childhood. So all of this is the byproduct of the belief of our age that everyone's entitled to their own opinions. And it's just as true as anything else. Everything is relative. So, causing a kind of conflict because, well, you can't do anything with belief, only harm. If we need understanding to fix an engine, to fly a plane, to cure someone from a medical illness, and belief functions in opposition to evidence, reason, understanding, and truth, well, you can't do anything good, can you? Of course, you can drop bombs, as the conservatives do. You can genocide someone not in your religious group, as the religious people do. Or you can enslave and work to death or starve to death the working class people, as the capitalist billionaires do. All classes of belief that we have allowed to reign in our society because of this fundamental idea that, well, if someone believes they are an expert, like a religious person, like a conservative, like a capitalist, then that's just as legitimate as anything else. Surely no understanding and expertise is needed. Surely that won't bring death and destruction sweeping across the land and eventually the extinction of our species. Or maybe it does. So, if belief is the cause, because it functions in opposition to understanding and truth, and what we actually want, of our internal conflict, and the conflict within our species, it might be worth nailing down for ourselves in understanding the nature of this specific belief, as well as how to address it rationally. Which means learning the art of understanding. That's the dialectic. That's what we are learning when we are seeking to read without interpretation, because interpretation is the functioning of belief. Interpretation means to add what isn't there in the text, or to leave out what is. Interpretation, projections, and blind spots. So, by learning to read the text as it is, we are practicing understanding. Also, by learning to see the thought or the structure and terms behind the thinking of Joseph and the author, who are functioning as dialecticians, we are learning how to become a dialectician ourselves. The dialectic, of course, the art of understanding that we are here to master. As intelligent beings, having reached that stage of development where we either A, live in perpetual conflict leading to our tragic death and the death of our species caused by belief, or B, learn to address the root cause of all human problems, belief, through understanding, through mastering the art of understanding, and then using that freedom from problems to go on and use that mastery of the art of dialectic to reach our highest goals. What we've been calling crossing the green line from ignorance to wisdom, and crossing the purple line from wisdom to what is beyond even experience, knowing the self. So there's a summary of where we are after about, I think, 17 episodes. We are breezing through this one. It's like almost 200 episodes of the last book we read. So, currently, we're asking the question, without understanding, can believers even know whether or not they believe the beliefs they believe they believe? And what it's turning out to be, what's turning out to be the case is Christians, one such example, or common, very common of our current age in our human development, common religious group, who are a group of believers, turns out they don't actually believe their own beliefs. Turns out they're not following Jesus at all. They're following a guy who rejects what Jesus says, a guy named Paul, and did his own belief-based interpretation or additions to the teachings and removal by rejecting what Jesus talks about to reach the states of mind he calls heaven. So, modern Christians are Pauline Jews, it seems. So they don't even know whether or not they believe their own beliefs, and it turns out they don't. Why is that? Because they don't learn how to read. So we've got a couple of examples that we can use ourselves. We've got the Adam and Eve story. That's one we can practice reading by comparing your current beliefs and then jumping into the text and reading it for what it is and comparing the two, and we'll see how we've been lied to in certain interesting and critical ways for centuries by, well, other believers, authority figures within politics, religion, and economics. Another example is the resurrection story. Turns out that's not in the text either. That was something added 50 to 70 years after the Gospel of Mark was written by people who once again were interpreting to save their own personal beliefs. It seems like the root cause of all human problems, the functioning of personal beliefs through interpretation to distort the truth and prevent understanding, seems like this human problem is true for all humans, including people who wrote the Gospels. Human problems apply to human beings. Who would have thought? So that's a part of reading as well, recognizing that authors or human beings have their own level of development of understanding and level of freedom from beliefs. And unless they've gone through the mastery of the dialectic, applied it in the art of philosophical midwifery, which is the specific use of the dialectic to surface and remove our beliefs, which cannot be completed without dream analysis. Unless they've gone through midwifery and dream analysis, they're going to be affected by their beliefs. That's just the way it is. If you haven't gone through brushing your teeth, you will have cavities. If you haven't gone through pilot school, you'll crash the plane. If you haven't gone through midwifery and dream analysis, you'll still be influenced by the beliefs that you're carrying. Which is why it's so important to read this book, because of the kinds of beliefs that you are likely to be influenced by. This one, it's all relative to belief and opinion, the belief that justifies and saves the legitimacy of belief, and Christianity are likely to be two big ones that have influenced your thought. So, while we are learning how to address beliefs themselves, we're also using as the example the two big ones. So there's an example of how to test how to read for yourself with the Adam and Eve story, and also the resurrection story. That seems to be a big one. The Adam and Eve start of the whole thing justifies slavery, justifies not asking questions, justifies not reaching enlightenment and being like God yourself, justifies the abuse and dehumanization of women because they're the cause of all sin. Women have been wearing a black eye for centuries because of this misinterpretation of a myth that was bollocks to begin with, but there you go. So learning how to read could solve that, which is interesting. And at the end of the story, Jesus magicking his way out of the grave as a zombie. Never happened. Not only was it added, we can learn why it was added. Because the end of the world, which was supposed to happen at the destruction of the church and the fall of Jerusalem. Am I saying that right? It was supposed to happen within their lifetime, and it didn't. And so, in order to save the belief, here we have an example of this goalposting. Instead of realizing the evidence disproves the belief, well, I should change my belief, like any rational person. Nope. We like our belief, thank you very much. We like how we can manipulate and exploit people and justify our cruelty and injustice through belief. So we're not going to change our beliefs. We're going to create an even bigger belief. Jesus came back to life in a physical form like a zombie. So even that addition, so there's no resurrection, which is interesting. That was just an interpretation added. But even that interpretation is non-physical. Maybe. In order to see it, you'll have to read it for yourselves. That's what we're learning, and we're facing someone who is very attached to that belief, Harry, showing us what it's like to learn something new. He is fighting back in every way he can to prevent any reflection and reason, reflection, and possible challenging of the beliefs that he is used to, and his whole life has been centered around, because in his words, if it turns out his beliefs were wrong, then he'd have to face the nothingness of his position and his life being led according to that belief up until now. Now, of course, it isn't nothingness. There is an alternative. That's called understanding. That's universal. That's how we reach truth. We all actually want it. It's necessary. But to a believer who has learnt to fear or even hate understanding, doesn't like that idea. So even understanding can be reframed within your belief structure and said, well, and someone can say, well, that's just your opinion. That's just word games. So we're learning about how that there are some cultures as well who take myths not literally, but analogically, the same way we are learning to face our beliefs analogically. As we learn to develop understanding, learn to read, learn to understand our dreams, learn to communicate and explore ideas with our friends, all of which is the dialectic, we will surface the blocks that will come as we follow rational steps to reach an intelligible goal or a rational goal, a knowable, achievable goal. We will face blocks that come up along the way. We don't take these beliefs about the beliefs that diminish us, diminish ourselves, diminish our mind, diminish our rationality, and diminish our learning to master the logos, all of these green things. We don't take them literally. But we don't ignore them either. We take them analogically. You're not actually a bad self with an incapable mind, can't understand, and shouldn't pursue the goal, the most important self-goal. You should serve others or something. It's not true, but it is a message analogically about something that happened in our past where we learnt that originally, our earliest teachers of these beliefs. So, similarly, there are some stories or myths that are designed analogically, such as Plato's myth of the cave in the upper world in the Balboa translation, because that's the translation that's accurate. There are some people like Philo who tried to save the Jewish religion by taking the Old Testament and trying to make or add an analogical understanding to it. So none of it's literal, but you can connect it to a rational system, because the rational is always higher than the image. Of course, to do that, you have to leave out a lot of stuff that you can't save. So a rational person would be like, well, why save your beliefs that you just happen to be born into? Why not just start with a rational system? Yep. If you're thinking that, you are an intelligent person. So that's where we are. We've got two characters. Harry, a firm believer. We've got three. Harry, a firm believer. Joseph, representing someone who has the dialectic, who's communicating to Harry, and Aaliyah, who's between the two, a foot in each world. Daywalker. That's a vampire thing. Blade. So we're learning how Joseph, as a dialectician, communicates what he has gone through himself. He had to struggle in the same way they are struggling. He'd had to learn to read in the same way they're learning to read, in the same way we're learning to read. And he had to develop and learn to have courage and be okay with the uncomfortability of recognizing you don't know and being open to what comes your way, which can be uncomfortable. Because that you have to give up the certainty, false certainty of course, of belief. So we're learning not just the truth, but how to communicate the truth, which is the two parts of the game in the dialectic, the truth and the humanness. Not just how do we see truth, but how do we participate in truth, which requires learning the reason and addressing the beliefs that come up. And of course, how do we communicate it with other human beings? It's a win-win-win.
Win-win-win-win-win. Making ice cream is a good and courageous thing.
And also, ice cream is good and courageous.
If you don't know, now you know.
Now you know. So that's where we are. Let's jump in. Going inside the cafe. Here is our dudes. Not him. This guy. Whoops. And this guy. And this guy. So, not only can you look at the Garden of Eden story, the resurrection, and see whether or not he was, sorry, I think I didn't quite finish this idea earlier, whether or not the resurrection, which was added, is a physical form or a spirit. Does he have a physical reincarnation, or does he appear to some but not to others who are present? Does he walk through doors? And did doubting Thomas actually put his fingers through the physical hole in his palms? So that's how we can derive a theory. Thumbs up. A belief starts with the conclusion and tries to reverse engineer facts and reason through interpretation to justify the false belief you're carrying. That's belief. But understanding has to derive a theory or explanation that makes sense of the evidence, which means with new evidence and reason, you can develop a better theory. That's called learning. Hooray! Whereas belief keeps you stagnant. So, not only can you address those, but you can get into Boltman's book on demythologizing Christianity, which addresses all of the key precepts which we take to be Christianity, and shows how they're not in the Gospels. It's Paul, this guy who murdered Christians for fun, and then decided, oh, he's enlightened all of a sudden, and better than Jesus. Uh-oh, and then rejects everything Jesus says, and that's the guy we listen to, well, Christians listen to. You could also get into Maccabee's book, The Myth Maker, to figure out where Paul's beliefs came from, because they must have had a cause. So that's where we are. Wait, did we go a bit further? How much further? I don't see any highlighting, so I think we're in the right spot. Okay, good. So what sort of things are addressed by Boltman and Maccabee? Well, certain ideas that we take for granted as what it means to be Christian. Jesus, the only begotten Son of God, that's one. You have to atone for sins, that's another one. There will be, Jesus will return on the clouds of heaven. He will redeem the believers. He will deprive the demonic forces of the power, so the good guys will only win when Jesus comes back, etc. and etc. And so there are other ones as well as these ones. They're all very unscientific beliefs. And then Harry learned about them in school, but didn't ask his girlfriend about them. It's an interesting relationship. Where must they have learnt their beliefs about what a loving relationship is? Interesting. But it seems like someone like Aaliyah wants more from a relationship than to be kept in the dark, or to be blind followers of belief. So, we're secretly shipping Joseph and Aaliyah. Well, I am. Okay, let's jump in here, shall we? So Harry just outlined those things I just mentioned, and Aaliyah jumps in and says, So, Joseph, that's what Boltman calls a myth. For me, Harry, Christianity has always been something I've heard around the house. Oh, interesting. I wonder if that's part of the reason why she was attracted to Harry in the first place, resembling the kind of beliefs and way of being and ideas of relationships and love, belief-based, that she grew up with. And as she is just getting into philosophy, only now starting to question. It was always around the house. I maybe believed it, but now the very notion of it turns me off. We don't want to turn Aaliyah off. Boo. I'll tell you why. The whole picture of God destroying everything so he can give eternal life to those who believe he is God, and sending those who don't believe to an eternal hell, is not my idea of an adequate reason to destroy an entire cosmos. Sounds pretty fucking stupid when you say it out loud. And that goes double when you figure out the reason he rules some and punishes others. Like, why would a god who rules over the entire universe with countless galaxies, each of which has countless suns, which in turn have their own planets rotating around them, why would such a god be upset over whether or not his son is believed by some creatures to be a god? Like, would a creator god ignore the good and evil his creatures do, and judge their worth solely in terms on whether or not they believe something about his son? Sounds like wacky, crazy garbage. Sounds like...
It's sad. And I'm sad for you.
Sounds like I'm sad for these people.
Fucking bitch, pussy ass fucker.
Aaliyah,
You just attacked my person. You just harmed my body.
you harmed my body with with your strong words. Right, Emma?
Freaks.
Emma. I don't quite have it yet. I'd like to express it better, but I don't have it in the words I'd like to yet. Already, without even the practice and learning the dialectic yet, learning understanding as a practice yet, she's doing pretty well already. So she's a kind of Athena character. Naturally, intuitively wise, or a lover of understanding to a high degree. Special person. But she also wants to keep learning and get it better. Notice Harry hasn't expressed that sentiment. No learning for believers, I wonder. So, Joseph, perhaps what you have, perhaps you, oh, here we go. Perhaps, but you do have a keen appreciation for justice. Aaliyah, I like that. Have you ever gotten into the idea of justice in Plato's Republic? I've heard it's more than each doing his own thing. But as for Boltman... By the way, it sounds like she has heard about the Republic. So this idea of each doing their own thing is tied to justice. But of course, there's more to understand what specifically he's talking about. Each what? Each person? Each soul? Each part of the soul? What is it? And is there more to it? So she's got a taste of it. As for Boltman, if that is what he calls mythology, then what's the issue? The issue is, says Joseph, whether or not those very beliefs can be found in the Gospels. Now, if they're not there, what difference does it make? Well, for one thing, they are only in Paul's writings. Paul's writings have been around for years before the Gospels were written. Did those later writers knowingly ignore Paul's gospel and stress something entirely different? One way or another, there is a problem, isn't there? Paul didn't include any of the teachings of Jesus in his gospel. And the gospel writers ignore, at least for the most part, the message of Paul. Seems like there was a drama between people who have different beliefs. Paul didn't like Jesus' beliefs. The gospel writers didn't like Paul's beliefs. So now I know a bit of Boltman, says Aaliyah. But what about Maccabee? Come on, Joseph. How do they relate? If you want it in a nutshell, Maccabee shows that since you can't find Paul's message in the other Gospels, and they came later, it is important to discover where Paul's message came from. You can say Maccabee demythologizes not Christianity, but Paul, hence the title, The Mythmaker. Aaliyah says, "Wow, that's heavy. Then Paul made up the myth others call Christianity. That's interesting. Is it interesting? Is it interesting that Paul made up the myth that we call Christianity today and rejected the teachings of Jesus? And the other gospel writers ignored or rejected, for the most part, Paul's stuff. We would have to, therefore, and you'd have to read it for yourself to make sure, call modern Christians not Christians at all. They don't even know what they believe. And if they believe what they think they believe, could call them more accurately Pauline Jews. Maybe. Something to think about. Paul made up the myth that others call Christianity. That's interesting. I've never thought of studying Christianity the way you have. You are suggesting, aren't you, that we look at it just as it is in itself. You are suggesting, aren't you? Oh, I read that. And we make contrasts back and forth as if each of the New Testament writers were arguing for their own positions. I have to admit, that sounds like an exciting way to study. Hooray. And at the time, you puzzle through, and at the same time, you can puzzle through analogies, allegories, parables, and whatnot. At this point, I don't know whether it should be believed as a myth or demithed. Aaliyah's talking. Aaliyah is saying, I don't know whether it should be understood or believed. And then Harry jumps in. Shut up! Christian belief is not a myth. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? If it is a myth, says Joseph, call it a myth. A myth has three elements. First, there must be players, and at least one of them must be of divine origin. Second, there must be a drama. And finally, there must be a setting or place where the action takes place. If these elements are present, then it's fair to call it a myth. But it's not mythological! I'll tell you something else. It is easy to criticize. Anyone can do it. But there are people who resent people like you, who chop their religion. Another thing, there are a lot of people whose lives would be worthless without that belief. That's right. If they couldn't cling to their belief, they would have nothing. And this was what we were looking at last time. And it seemed that Harry didn't have an answer for that, so we gave one ourselves. I went a big rant because that's one I've heard a lot. Surely we can't remove religious beliefs because some people are just not worthy to understand. Some people are too stupid to have rational meaning in their life. Some people deserve to be exploited and manipulated by a rabbi or a pope or an imam or some cult leader because they're too stupid to have meaning in their lives properly, real meaning. And of course we looked at how meaning must be associated with the self. And self isn't a matter of belief. You don't have to believe anyone you have a self. So that's not up for debate. And we went back to the other part of the text where we saw that in order to reach the self, you have to go from beliefs or ignorance into wisdom, which requires understanding, which belief opposes and circumvents and cuts down. So anyone who wants to reach higher states of mind, belief will get in the way of that. Anyone who wants to solve problems, belief will get in the way of that because the belief is the cause of problems and understanding is required to address them. And anyone who wants to know the self, which is the purpose of all beings or the destiny of man, the highest intended functioning of all intelligent beings, so we call it the destiny of mankind. Everyone's purpose requires understanding to move from those peak experiences of wisdom over the purple line to know the self. Therefore, anyone like Harry who says there are some people who need belief to have a meaningful life is against reality, against the self, and is acting in a harmful and cruel way towards anyone who has a self and requires understanding to reach it, understanding to reach the nature of their mind, and understanding to solve problems, all of which is prevented by belief. So it turns out to be the exact opposite. Belief doesn't give meaning to people's lives, it actively destroys it. So this incredibly patronizing view that some people are too fucking stupid to think and have a meaningful life without some garbage bullshit fed down their throats for fear of eternal punishment in hell isn't legitimate. The opposite is the case. The direct opposite. So, that wasn't in the book, so we had to do the work ourselves. And I said that very loudly last time. So, some people would have nothing without their beliefs. Opposite is true, by the way. But, so what? So, if they didn't cling to their belief, they would have nothing, says Harry. Sure, and to Harry we say,
Fuck.
yes. Sure, you can call it a myth, but it's not a myth to a believer. So what do you gain by all this? Your clever way of understanding leaves nothing for belief. It's you that doesn't understand, Joseph. You haven't understood that what is needed is not an understandable belief. It's belief. It's a belief you don't need to understand. Stay ignorant and stupid and abused and manipulated in conflict within yourself and living in a terrible world because we allow belief to rule. Live in perpetual conflict and suffering forever. Because it's you can only be saved by that irrational belief you can't understand. Why? Because some idiot told me and I'm too stupid to think for myself. No, that's not in the text. Why? Because it's belief that saves us, not understanding. Again, the opposite. Joseph. Harry, when you're interested in exploring ideas, do you first separate out those you want to protect? Like you're picking favorites, right? So if you're being a rational person, you want to explore an idea, do you First of all, we're not going to explore this idea or this idea. These are the sacred cows. We may never explore those. Harry says to that, "Now look, Joseph. Aaliyah over there may not know what you're driving at, but I do. Take the myth out of Christianity and you've got nothing. That's the scholars' way of attacking Paul's position. You guys want to take the Paul part out of the Bible. You all want to take Paul out of the Bible. I've heard it discussed before at SB. College he was at. Why can't you just leave well enough alone?" Joseph. Is the question too difficult to deal with? Consider it this way. If Paul has a teaching, that is not found in the other Gospels, and he does call his teachings the Gospel, so why believe Paul other than Jesus? There's a banger line. Paul has a teaching not found in the other Gospels. A. He calls his teaching the Gospel. B. Why believe Paul other than Jesus? And therefore C. You see, Harry, the question is not trivial. It asks if Jesus clearly and unambiguously gave the requirements to become one of his followers and for gaining eternal life. If Paul gives another set of requirements that are altogether different, why would anyone who claims to follow Jesus follow Paul? So there's another reason we need to read the text and learn how to read as we are doing here. Because if we read it, recognizing they are different people who have their own position, we even have developed our little graph. If you're a person, you can rank how far up your development of vision, understanding, and mastery of the Logos you've reached, and how far your understanding and therefore freedom from or dissolution from the binds of ignorance or your personal pathologos beliefs you've gotten. So everyone's going to be somewhere along there. We took the top of this and the top of this to get the ideal, which is what we're aiming for. And oh my goodness, I've drawn all over the cafe. I better fix that or else I'm going to get thrown out. Let me just move this in here. There we go. There we go. So, with that in mind, you can read it and see for yourself if in Mark Jesus gives, or in the Gospels, if Jesus gives a clear and unambiguous set of requirements to become one of his followers and gain eternal life. And then you can compare it to a different set that Paul gives. If they're both there and they're different, why would a Christian reject Jesus and follow Paul? Is it because they haven't learnt to read? If so, what the fuck are our teachers within the religions, the rabbis, imams, priestess, pastors, ministers, doing if they are preventing us from learning what we need to learn to read for ourselves? Number one. Number two, why are they lying to us? To tell us the opposite of what was there. Now, for 1,000 years, you'd be murdered if you had the book. And it wasn't even allowed to be in a language you could read. So they went full force in preventing reading. Couldn't even have the book. Kill ya. Sounds like a conservative politician wants in schools. Or the book burnings of other religion, we're talking about that. Or the burning of books by billionaire Epstein-class tyrants in capitalism. Same. Very, very, very simple. It's just belief and belief-based groups stuck in the same script of opposing understanding, learning to read, all the things we do in this channel, causing our ignorance and suffering. And Armageddon, it seems, unless we wake up. So why would anyone follow Jesus and not Paul? Asks Joseph. Baloney. Baloney, Joseph. Nothing but baloney. You know damn well what all this means. You do know, don't you, that Paul got his teachings from Jesus, not from any man. And as he says, so there's something that Paul claims, and as he claims, so, well, he says it, so you're talking nonsense. So what you're saying is nonsense. And on the road to Damascus, he had one hell of a conversion experience, and that started him off. He had a real Christian light experience, which is an insane thing to say, because if it's a light experience of mind, it's the opposite of belief, so it can't be Christian. You can't claim enlightenment for yourself. Anyway, so he had a real Christian light experience, and all the rest is pagan oriental mishmash. New Age bunko. And of course, another very common expression we hear from people who are ignorant of real thinking, real rationality, real philosophy. They claim higher experiences of your own consciousness, higher levels of reality, higher cognitive functions that we all have access to. That's all bunko or new age wackiness or foo-foo. Why? Because there are wacky new age people who don't have a rational approach to understanding these things, and they get lumped in. If these guys are lying, then these guys must be lying. If these religious people are lying about God, then these philosophers are. If Trump's idea of justice is unjust, then there is no justice. Then this guy's idea of justice isn't real. And of course, there are people, often believers in religion, who dismiss any rational understanding of the divine or direct experience. There's our reason and evidence. So, keeping people stupid, ignorant, and unevolved. That song means back from my break. So the rest is all Oriental mishmash and New Age bunko, says Believer McGee. Joseph says, "You are trying to mix oil and wine, Harry. Paul never claimed to have a major conversion experience." What? It was Luke who claimed that Paul had a conversion experience. Compare each point that Paul makes in Galacticans about his experience. Says our exercise to learn to read it for ourselves. Compare each point Paul makes in Galacticans about his experience and teachings, and examine what Luke says in Acts about that conversion experience. There are 3 references in Luke. Check and compare, right there, and highlight that. 3 references in Luke. Check and compare them, and you will find they can't be reconciled. Indeed, Luke wrote at around 85 AD and interpreted what he believed must have been Paul's experience. So there we have, once again, interpretation playing a role. However, it must have occurred some 50 years earlier. But Paul never claimed that he had the experience that Luke describes. Why does Luke say that Paul had an experience that Paul himself never said he had? So there's a question for you to take with you in your reading, to wonder about as you go through this exercise. Surely the most compelling argument against Luke's version is merely to reflect on the significance it would have had for Paul if he had mentioned it. When you consider, I'm highlighting everything. When you consider the significance of those experiences, it is altogether impossible to understand. If Paul had such experiences, why had he never mentioned them in his letters or preaching? For Paul was always intent on establishing his authority with others. So as you read more about Paul, you'll find this guy was very into establishing himself as the authority so he can rule over others via his own personal beliefs, which is what a lot of people, that's called fate. Those who are trapped in their own ignorant beliefs will soon recognize no one gives two shits about belief. You don't pay to go to school to learn belief, you learn understanding. And those people who are blocked from understanding but still want to pretend to be in charge, or a knower or a leader, without developing the understanding required to be a good leader or reach knowing, will realize, oh shit, I have to force people to pretend to care about my opinions. I'll either become a petty tyrant of a business under capitalism, or become a conservative politician. Now, of course, the establishment left are all conservatives too right now, which is alarming. Or I can become a preacher, or a local pastor, or a bishop, or an imam or rabbi, or even start my own cult. And there are lots of horrific movies about those that you can find and watch if you're interested. Don't recommend them. You get the idea. You don't have to see it play out horrifically once you understand its cause. Or have kids. Tragically, we allow kids to be raised under that disgusting paradigm. They give a shit about your beliefs because they have to. They're stuck there because of our irrational bullshit society ruled by belief. Anyway, so Paul was very intent on establishing his authority over others via belief. If that was the case about his personality, you'd have to ask the question, if he had such experiences, why did he never mention them in his letters or preaching? Excuse me. Oh, big stretch. So that's another question you can carry with you if you read the references in Luke, from Luke in Acts, and Paul in the Galatians. I called it Galacticans. Sounds like some sort of, I don't know, He-Man enemy race, or Marvel world-eating villain, Galacticus. So it's Paul in Galatians. So you can carry that question. Why does Luke say Paul had an experience he didn't have? And why didn't Paul talk about his own experience? Especially considering he was so intent on establishing himself as an authority. Harry, responds by saying, What makes you think it could never have happened? How can you sit there and say what you do? You weren't there. Luke was. There's a famous old YouTube video of some old man trying to brainwash a group of children in a Christian school. And he's saying the same things. When anyone challenges your faith by saying dinosaurs exist, you all say, were you there? And if somebody says that the world was more than 6,000 years old, you say, were you there? Getting these kids to repeat the same cliche aphorism catchphrase to thought-terminating cliche. Dinosaurs don't exist because you weren't there. Oh, same thing here. Harry must have grown up in a school with a dickhead like that, brainwashing him. You weren't there, so you can't know. You can't think and judge and reason. And because Luke's there, and everything is relative to perception, and if he was there to perceive it, it must be true. No one's ever got a perception wrong, or lied, or been mistaken. So, you weren't there, Luke was, says Harry. Joseph says, no, he wasn't. Uh-oh. Oh, snap. He just said,
That's anti-feminist.
It's sad. And I'm sad for it.
She's a moron. She's a bad individual, BHI.
I coined that.
no, she's
How
not.
can you be this stupid?
How is it illegal? How is it legal?
He just said, how is it legal to be this stupid? Because he wasn't there, says Joseph. He said he compiled his account from studying other sources. But he wasn't an eyewitness. Why would an eyewitness copy 60% of Mark's gospel? So Luke copies 60% of Mark, which is interesting. Assume Paul had the experience that Luke describes and ask yourself, why would that event have been ignored? Why would that event have been ignored by Paul? What reason would he have, or anyone else for that matter, for not mentioning it in his talks, especially those he had with the apostles of Jesus? If he told them, don't you think it would have been included in the epistles by at least one of the apostles before Luke mentions it? Paul said he didn't receive his direction or gospel from any man, yet Luke said that after Paul's light experience, he was given his mission by Ananias. So Luke said that Paul was given his mission by Ananias, even though Paul said he didn't receive the gospel from any man. So these two people are telling very different stories. Again, it won't really hit, it won't land, and it won't be yours, and you won't be able to benefit from it, and you won't be able to share it with others unless you read it for yourself. Spend an afternoon, have fun, invite friends around. If somebody texted me and said, hey, come around for coffee, we are going to take a look at this section of the text. I've got the PDF from the link below, and we're going to look at this page, or these pages around page 60, and we're going to check out this the Bible, the New English, I think is the New England or New English translation I hear is the most accurate. You have to confirm that for yourself. We're going to go through and we're going to check these for ourselves and nail them down. That way it'll be ours forever. Whenever we come across some Christian teaching, we can go, oh, that's Paul. No, but Paul's actually legitimate because, no, that's Luke. But Luke was there. No, he wasn't there. Why would someone who's there copy 60% of Mark? If someone texted me that and said that's what we're doing for an afternoon, I'd be there in a flash. Harry seems to be less enthused. He says,
I hope he can post more Chinese milking type content / material.
is that what he says? He wants to post what?
Goon, 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 goon. Goon, 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 goon.
That sounds like Gooner bait.
Gooner.
Chinese milking what? Harry, cut that out. Harry actually says, wait a minute, you've got it all backwards. It wasn't the light that made the experience great. That's not the point. It was the message of Jesus that transformed him. The religious life for Christians starts and ends with the cross, not Edison.
You actually are too stupid to interact with the rest of the world.
You should literally be in a labor camp for the rest of your life. You should be in the mines for the rest of your life. You're such a fucking
That was a terrible joke. So, by the way, even though a believer or someone who's willfully ignorant like Harry doesn't understand what is meant by the brilliant light of being, we recognize that as the experience of ousia, or the experience of mind knowing itself as mind or intellect. It is eternal, so it's called being. It's the model for understanding. It's nous or ousia. Now, if you went through the other book we just finished, Socrates and Jesus, a Dialogue in Heaven, when we finished, we went into the ox herding pictures, and we saw that the 10 ox herding pictures of Zen Buddhism recognize that the first two ox herding pictures are ignorance. That glimpse of the brilliant light of being, or nous, is the third ox herding picture, and only the first stage of enlightenment. There's the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth, and then two different kinds that are even higher, ninth and 10th. So while we can recognize it as this experience of nous, what starts as a glimpse isn't the whole of it. You have to go on to develop understanding, purify your beliefs in order to participate in it in greater depth. Those are the different levels, allowing you to facilitate that as a dialectician yourself, or riding the ox, one of the ox herding pictures. And of course, crossing the purple line as well. So not only does Harry not recognize what this brilliant light of being experience is, that Jesus claimed to have had, and Luke is saying that Paul is supposedly had, but Harry also doesn't recognize that it's just the first step. Now, many people take that first step, as Jesus did, and think they've reached the end. And they write books. I pick on Eckhart Tolle a little bit. I reached enlightenment. Here is how you can get there, and it changed my life. But there are many people who think that's the whole thing, and then they do their own self-help courses, or write their own books, or start their own cults, or whatever. So that's very problematic, because having an experience doesn't mean you understand it. Otherwise, everyone who has been in a plane should know how to fly a plane. Also, having a glimpse of something doesn't mean you're in it in greater depth, and you can see what's there to be seen in it, and you can function through it. Having a glimpse of something true doesn't remove what's false. That's why we have midwifery and dream analysis necessarily alongside of it. So, and by the way, having a glimpse of this doesn't give you the understanding to not just move through it, see what's there to be seen, function via it, and purify what's false, but it also doesn't give you the ability to see that it must have a higher cause. So there's a lot lacking with just a glimpse, pal. Don't make that mistake that Jesus made in the Gospel of Mark. And many others have. So, of course, all of this will be over Harry's head because he hasn't done the work in making these wonderful tables as a result of reading and reflection. So, he is saying that that light experience is a physical light, like a light bulb, therefore Edison. What a lame joke.
You sick fuck.
Exactly. Wait a minute, you've got it backwards. It wasn't the light that made the experience great. That's not the point. It was the message of Jesus that transformed him. The religious life for Christians starts and ends with the cross, not Edison. The fact is, as I heard at SB, experiencing light experiences without Jesus starts a fire that pagans burning in hell will see. Wow, so here's an example of some terrible teachers at his college, obviously religious, creating their own personal mythology to interpret genuine insight experiences in a negative way to demonize them. By the way, if it's an experience of knowing and you know something, do you have to believe someone else? So if it was capable for all of us to know something, why would we believe the jerks at the head of the belief hierarchy? So, sounds like he bought into it. Joseph, that doesn't sound like something you learned at UCSB. So, Joseph is somewhat familiar with that college and realizes, no, they didn't tell you that there. That sounds like something your bullshit preacher or pastor or minister told you. So what? Aaliyah. Joseph, would you mind filling what? Don't be a gooner.
Gooners.
Would you mind filling me in on the issue here? You two are just winding each other up. So, adding some rationality to this conversation, which is just slowly escalating into irrationality, with one person being completely blocked from wanting to understand and trying to pick fights and be a bit of a dick, and the other one, well, trying to pull him back into reason. Thankfully, Aaliyah is here and saying, hey, listen, talk to me instead. This is the benefit of having these conversations in groups. So often we see an interviewer talking to a politician or something on some program, and the politician's like, well, I refuse to answer that. I saw one today. There's a lady saying, we should stop murdering children and defending these Epstein billionaires who do terrible things to children. And the conservative news reporter's like, huh, who cares? They can get away with it, so who cares? And the lady's like, what the fuck are you talking about? What kind of an attitude is that? His attitude was, well, if I refuse to answer or I refuse to care, then and you have to convince me to change my mind, all I can do, like every conservative, capitalist, or religious politician who's asked a question in front of the Senate or in front of a reporter, they can just lie or refuse to answer or try go off on tangents or start a fight, get personal. Literally, that's the playbook. All of those Republican appointees to the Supreme Court, in order to refuse to ask any questions about their character and their level of expertise, which were both terrible, they just tried to start fights. You're asking me these questions because you're fighting me, and you're bad, and you're the Democrats, and I'm not going to listen to you because you're political. All of this garbage. But if you've got other people there, you can go, oh, okay, you answer it. The person next to you. Yeah. Because when we solve problems, there are two things we have to do. Remember the two things we have to do? We have to follow rational steps to reach our intelligible goal by following the logos. There's the answering questions thing. But we also have to address the problems that were there in the first place. We have to perfect the logos and purify our pathologos, like on this chart. Meaning, when you're asking some fascist politician who was killing people for fun and profit a question, just because they refuse to say that there is such a thing as truth, or there is no good and bad, it's all just a matter of perspective, or they'll have to look at it some other day, or maybe they'll release the files in the future, you're not asking them to find the truth. Truth isn't based on personal opinion. Just because they're lying or refusing to answer doesn't change the truth. Doesn't change that murdering children is bad. Doesn't change that exploiting people for fun and profit under capitalism is always bad. Doesn't change the fact that religion and conservatism or any belief-based tradition is bad. Truth isn't about opinion. We ask these people the questions so we can surface their pathologos beliefs and way of being that caused their genocide, or their taught using these disgusting phosphor bombs to burn children from the inside, or to keep everyone enslaved and own all the houses and food, when we could solve all human poverty and homelessness 1,000 times over. Those people aren't going to reach truth. They don't give a shit. They're sick. We ask them the questions with others around who can pick up the slack when they refuse to answer or start lying. We ask these people questions so we can surface the cause of the problem. We're here to not just reach truth, but address the false. True and false, truth and humanness, logos and pathologos. So when some fascist says, well, I'm not answering that question because you're a woman, great, we'll write that down. So part of whatever his family or cultural belief is justify injustice through sexism. Okay, that's our job here. We have problems, not to suffer from them, but to surface them and learn every possible belief, clan, tradition, or belief system, or family belief group, or kind or class that can happen in opposition to truth. So we can map out the nature of all intelligibility to fulfill our role as a human race. That's our higher purpose as a race, as a whole. Individually, we address our personal pathologos. As a dialectician, you help facilitate that while also learning about the principle of pathologos. As a species, we address every kind of pathologos that's around because every single one will surface. That's why we talk about the principle of being in the game. You have to set a personally meaningful goal that you seek to reach with excellence. Which means you'll keep going and going and going until you ultimately reach your highest goal, because you have to approach that goal while also learning the dialectic. As we said last time, if your goal, whatever your goal is in life, it's to make yourself better. So after you reach one goal, you'll set a higher goal, until your goal becomes knowing the self. But any one of those goals, you will have to not just learn the steps to reach the goal and do that, you have to address the blocks on every single step. In other words, it's truth and removing the false, perfecting the true in excellence and purifying the false. That's our job. We don't interview these people to find the truth. You do that in the first half of the interview, when the guy's not there, or with other people who are actually seeking truth. Then you bring on the person who is responsible for murdering children or enslaving our species or destroying our planet under some belief-based bullshit, and you see, how do you respond? Not to find truth, but to surface the false. To learn about them. Oh, and what made you think that women are less than men? Or that the Palestinians deserve to die? Or only the billionaires get to have fun, and everyone else are slaves that can be abused and tortured and exploited for profits? Where did you learn that? What did your parents look like when they said that? Did you have a religion as well as parents? Did you have a culture as well as religion as well as parents? Let's put it all together. And as we seek our excellence as a species to reach the highest intelligible goal of our human species, we either do this or we go extinct. There's no second or there's no third option. We will face every single kind of belief because every one of them will come out of the woodwork. Imagine saying, well, to live in a rational society where we can all be free, we can't have people functioning as slaves to billionaires because of fear of homelessness. Why don't we all have a house? No, we don't ask why. We all get a house. That's just rational. You can imagine all the landlords coming up and say, no, I get 100 houses, you get 0 houses. Why? What's the principle? What makes you think that? Is it universal? Would you be okay with 0 houses and everyone else having 100 houses? Oh, no, you don't? Oh, you're special. What makes you special? Why do you get all the houses and we get no houses? Explain. Is it because we're immigrants? Is it because we're different skin color? Why? Explain it. Oh, you're not going to listen to your justification in regards to truth, but we need to understand how you became sick. When a cancer patient goes into a doctor's office, we don't say, tell me about your cancer, so we can make everyone else just like you. We'll give everyone cancer. Because you're a billionaire, so your sick beliefs are the ones we should make everyone live according to. Let's give everyone cancer. Tell me about your cancer. No. We want to know about his condition and the causes of his condition to A, help that sick person, and B, make sure those conditions gave rise to the cancer are addressed. No more pollution in the water if it's causing people cancer. So we address the conditions within society to improve our race and the individual situation for that person to help them, because everyone matters. Not punishment. Punishment is fucking stupid for babies. Baby brain bullshit. Doesn't help the person who's doing the bad things, doesn't help the society that created the conditions where he learned how to do bad things, and that bad things were good actually. That's what every interview should be. Every courtroom should be. And will be. Or we go extinct. There's no There's no middle ground. Punish some people? No. Only do good things but ignore the beliefs that surface? No. Those murderers will murder the good people. They murdered Socrates. If we say, well, everyone should have wealth equality, all those people who get off on the sickness of exploiting those because they're not in the elite circles, because they're not billionaires, will try and stop everyone being able to afford life and participate in life. Only we get to play golf. Only we get to go wherever we want. You have to suffer. They will all come out and try and stop that. Therefore, we can start to recognize what our purpose is as a species within a greater cosmos, to surface all of the kinds of beliefs that will surface to try and counterattack our reaching of the human excellence of ourselves. Necessarily, as a principle, that applies to individuals and the collective. So what? Why are we talking about that now? That's why we have these conversations in public. Harry is just shooting down reason now. He's reached as far as he could go, rationally. Now he's just voicing his own personal ignorance, trying to start a fight with Joseph. Joseph is saying, hey, you're lying now, mate. You didn't learn this at UCSB. And Harry's response is, yeah, so what? I'm lying. Who gives a fuck? Screw you. But because we're in public, because it's more than one person here, the next person can jump in. Oh, okay, you're out. Who's in? Pick up where we left off. And that was the role Aaliyah's playing now, or is the role she's playing now. Joseph says, hey, that doesn't sound like you're telling the truth. So what? I don't care. Screw truth. He's out. He's triggered. He's in his problem. Now, for the best people in the world who genuinely seek truth and wisdom, that could be an object for midwifery, because he's in his problem state now. Good time to talk about it. Or a friend can say, hey, listen, it looks like you are just abandoning truth and integrity. Let's write down your state of mind and address it later and get back to the conversation. So you either deal with it now or later. Third option is what Aaliyah is presenting. Hey, you two are just winding each other up now. Let me take over. Fill me in on the issue. I'll take the baton in this relay race. Speaking of the Republic. So, one of the reasons why it's good to have these conversations in public. It's a win-win-win.
A win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-
Would you mind filling me in on the issue here, please, Joseph? You two are just winding each other up. Which reminds me of that debate we mentioned a few days ago. Behind our talk is an issue, all right? Mercia Eliade. What the fuck? Who's that? Mercia Eliade reports that some meditating monks on Mount Anthos were so spiritually advanced into the Divine Luminosity. So Mount Anthos, so I might have to look that up after stream. Were so spiritually advanced into the Divine Luminosity that I remember this story. That the night, I've heard it before. that at night their caves shone with such intensity that they were visible from a considerable distance. In our time, one night a few years ago, Sai Baba, you might have heard of that guy, went through a similar experience on a mountaintop where his followers witnessed his radiance, which was also said to have been visible from quite a distance. Elia, consider what you would say if you were to see someone transformed by divine light, so much so that their face shone like the sun, and their very garments were so penetrated by that light that they were as white as light itself. What might you say if you saw that, Elia? So 2 examples of someone whose experience of mind knowing itself is divine luminosity, or nous, or knowing. Cross the green line. Truth being mind knowing itself, which is ousia, nous, the whole of mind. They were into it in such depth that it manifested physically as well. A couple of accounts from the past and the present. Oh, big stretch. So, if you saw this, Miss Aaliyah, what would you say? Doop. Doop, 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 doop.
I'm going to get you. I'm going to find you. And I'm going to get you.
That's weird that you think that.
It is weird that he thinks that. What would you say? Though someone was transformed by the divine light so much that their face shone like the sun, and their very garments were so penetrated by that light that they were as white as light itself. Interesting. Garments becoming that pure white light, because light is white. Well, colorless, but anyway, let's not get into physics. Aaliyah, do I get you right? Are you saying that there is some evidence out there that claims that some religious experiences are so intense that they produce that? I guess that's what you're all saying, right? I guess that's what you're saying, all right. I'll tell you that that is something I am having difficulty imagining. But if I knew it did occur, I wouldn't be the same person as I am now, that's for sure. The 2 things that she's telling us. Number 1, she hasn't been doing the this stuff that we've been doing in our reading on this channel over a couple of years, so we became more and more familiar with it. Also, perhaps not experienced it herself, but also she's not familiar with philosophy, because she's calling what is a experience of mind, nous, a religious experience. Religion doesn't have that experience. Religion means to be bound by belief. Religion is ignorance. So she's calling a philosophical, or you could say spiritual, because it's the spirit separated from the body to know itself as mind, or separated from the physical world of perceptions and appearance and becoming to the world of mind or being. So you could call it spiritual, or you could call it philosophical, because as we explained earlier, that's literally what was described as philosophy. Worth reading again. So this is Joseph explaining philosophy in a sentence. The journey to the idea of the good, or the eidos, or experience of the... So idea with a capital I means experience. The journey to the idea of the good, which, by the way, is described as the most brilliant light of being. There you go. Is the royal road the philosopher travels. That's why we follow the logos. And gaining that vision is the practice of philosophy. That's what philosophy is, having that vision. But there is still more. You see, once that has been seen, one knows it as ultimate reality, and from that lofty vision, one is said to be able to go on to grasp the nature of the good itself through the mastery of the dialectic. So there's philosophy. Dun dun dun, and dun dun dun, crossing the green and then the purple of line using the dialectic. So, earlier in this conversation, this brilliant light of being was defined as what philosophy is. But Aaliyah is making sense of her, well, what we're talking about, with what she is familiar with, religion. Which of course is a difficulty. Some people hear about these experiences or even have them, and if they haven't been doing the work we have been doing here to develop understanding of the Logos and Dianoia, you may make sense of that peak experience via your beliefs, thus further entrenching yourself in your ignorance. Now I'm a super Christian because I just saw what? Well, the only language I have for it is my Christian upbringing. I saw Jesus. I saw the Holy Spirit. I saw Mother Mary in her beauty. So now I'm really willing to kill and die for this Christian shit. Which is, of course, the story of Jesus in the Gospel of Mark, if you want to read that book for yourself. So, we're learning about Aaliyah, aren't we? So she's very smart. She recognizes that if this is a legitimate thing, then it should change your life. If humans can experience divine luminosity, can know ourselves outside of the physical world by consciousing consciousness, or minding mind, and it can be an experience so profound that it will shine through your physical appearance or clothes, then that should likely change my life. Good for you. I'm having difficulty imagining it, so she's calling it some religious experience. Which is what we have to be alert for, because that's the language. It helps us understand where someone is at. It's how we convey the truth relevant to where the person is at. But if it did occur, I wouldn't be the same person I am now, that's for sure. Joseph. What if you were among those who were led up to the mountain that night to witness Jesus, Moses, and Elijah bathed in that light? Would you regard that as a worthy object of speculation? Recall that Moses led his people out of their captivity and gave them commandments, while Elijah was said to be able to restore all things. Now, if this took place, is it not likely that you might wonder about the meaning of this transformation experience and why Moses and Elijah were included in it? For an everyday existence was transcended in a radiant transformation into the divine. Consider, is this not rising from a life which, by contrast, is dead? Because participating in this way into the divine deserves the name Son of Man. Can you say that's what it means? So, if you read the Gospel of Mark, you'll see that the high point in the drama is when Jesus was on this mountain and had that brilliant light experience that was so shiny that others around could see it in the way that has been described by others who've had that experience. But the way that the people watching it make sense of it, like Aaliyah made sense of it in her language, they made sense of it with reference to their language. And what's their religious language? The Jewish stuff. So they described Jesus' peak or luminous experience with, or glimpse, first glimpse, with the personifications from their tradition, Moses and Elijah. And so Joseph is asking why, if they saw that light experience, might they use those particular figures to communicate it or make sense of it? First of all, Moses led people out of captivity and gave them commandments for a new way of living. From one life to a new life, and some principles in that new way of living. Elijah, number 2, restore all things. How was that peak experience a new way of being upon new principles that was also restoring or healing in some kind of a way? And if you've had this glimpse into reality, or mind knowing itself as eternity, or this deep insight into the nature of all things all at once in a brilliant light oneness experience, or beauty itself, or justice itself, of course, we want all of them in philosophy, because all of the things we use in understanding to guide the dialectic are all aspects. That's why it's idea with a capital I, eidos, or aspects of that light experience. So they use Moses and Elijah. We might use Aphrodite to point to the beauty of all of those aspects perfectly harmonized. We might talk about Apollo because it's rational, understandable. Harmony, the harmony of the parts, you could even use for Apollo. We might talk about Demeter. As it being illuminating or enlivening or restoring in some way. Difference in philosophy is we might end up with 12 or 4 triads. Apollo, Aphrodite, and Hermes to talk about, well, let's not get into it now, but you might be able to recognize, because we are developing understanding all the way through, because all of those principles are the building blocks of understanding. So we might not use Elijah and Moses, we might use Apollo to talk about its rationality or harmony, Aphrodite to talk about its beauty, Demeter to talk about its life, Hera to talk about its vivivity, or vitality. We might talk about Zeus in it being a ruling paradigm for the dialectician, for everyone. You might even create other personifications to represent justice if it was perfectly ordered the way it should be. So, the people, well, they weren't philosophers, so they have Moses and Elijah as their way of describing it. And of course, that demonstrates why understanding is always better than belief. How loaded with other irrational stuff are those religious figures? How lacking in true understanding are they? So, a fantastic demonstration of why philosophy is the archetypal or true or ideal spiritual tradition. Wouldn't you want to understand it properly? Wouldn't you want to see it in all its depth? Why would you accept belief if understanding was on the table? Philosophy is therefore the spiritual tradition of understanding. So the real one, or the archetypal one. Not because I'm a Buddhist, or because I'm a Taoist, because I'm a Mormon, or whatever, because that's what understanding means. It's transpersonal. So anyone can play. That's why I'm doing this for free on the intranets. I don't get a subscription fee. Don't get ad revenue. Don't get anything. It's just the right thing to do. Maybe I get friends along the way to talk to and reflect with. So I'm not selling something. I'm not a cult leader or a religious figure. No, there's no belief involved. Helping people to read and understand. It's transpersonal. So, with that in our back pocket, we might be able to make sense of why they are this universally available, because it's mind knowing itself. We all have mind, don't we? Experience of divine luminosity can manifest as in a physical way as well, and these people might make sense of it according to the language that they are familiar with, Elijah and Moses. So, if an everyday existence was transcended in a radiant transformation into the divine, could you say this is rising from a life that's by contrast dead? So if all you knew before this glimpse was the physical world of appearances, maybe you've lived a life chasing money, chasing power, seeking to manipulate people's beliefs so you can be the billionaire, so you can be the Epstein class billionaire, so you can be the politician, so you can be the pope of whatever cult you want to start. So you can fulfill your physical pleasures and desires based on the physical appearances of beauty and so forth. Imitating your physical appearances of what it means to be knowing from your parents. If that's your whole life in the physical world, up until this glimpse of something far more real or true, good or beneficial, bringing yourself into a oneness or unity, life-changing, shouldn't it be? Will it change your life? Now, ideally, wake you up to philosophy. That would be the good way of dealing with that life change. Therefore, Moses, change your life, taking you from a dead way of being to a real, meaningful way of being. And if it brings about a goodness or benefit, is that Elijah? Or what they would be referring to, maybe? So wouldn't this rising from a life which was by contrast dead, right, all the physical things that are gonna fade away like dead objects, you can't take the Bugattis with you, they'll soon be dead, turn to dust, your Bugattis, your bank accounts, statues built in your honor, the opinions of the many who give you fame. By contrast, are they all dead, useless, or soon to be dead things? Because participating in this way into the divine deserves the name Son of Man. So not only do the people describing what they see use a certain kind of language to make sense of it, so too Jesus? Well, no, Jesus, I don't think Jesus calls himself the Son of Man. But we talk about the destiny of man. Are you of the nature? So the word son of in the Greek meant more of the nature of. So are you of the nature of the true race of man? Homo sapiens, if that's what it means to participate in intelligence and wake up to the purpose of humanity, of your existence, of intelligent life. Of the nature of the true race of man. Son of Man. Let's keep reading and see what Elias says. Well, for one thing, I would say that that happening would be worth 1,000 miracles. I guess it is one of the stories about Jesus, but I had never heard it. But I never heard of it. What do you do with it? Sorry, what do you do with it? I mean, how can you study that kind of thing? How? Says Joseph. Compare and contrast. That's how. So that's a big line. Let's highlight compare and contrast. Compare and contrast. We were just saying how the aspects of knowing, that light of being, become the tools of understanding. She was just asked, how do we understand? Compare and contrast. What's that? Some things are going to be the same, some things are going to be different. There's going to be likenesses to some things and unlikenesses. What are we doing? Oh, by the way, these are the self-logos terms. And we said one way of, the way of understanding belief is to associate with the lesser of the pairs. You are apart when you are a Mormon, and you're limited, you can't read Harry Potter, and you can only wear your magic underpants, in conflict with the whole. Image thinking is there is no whole, it's just parts. So this is all the physical world stuff. The state of mind of understanding is the way of being of understanding is to have your state of mind as a whole by function and also functioning providentially to the parts. But the word, we said that all of these things are aspects of the divine light of being. In other words, where do we get whole and part from? You never see them in the physical world. You see adjectives, you see their force, you see their functioning. You don't see Mr. Whole walking down the street. You don't see Mr. Part down at the shopping center. You don't see Mrs. Same down at the arcade. But our hypothesis is that brilliant light of being can be understood as, in reflection, the whole of all parts. Out of time, including everything in time as the paradigm. Completely unlimited, but completely self-contained as a oneness. In other words, all of these words together. Beauty itself, justice itself, benefit itself, there's Elijah. Excellence itself, reality itself, there's waking up to a new reality, there's Moses. So all of the building blocks for thought, understanding, and experience, and the terms we use in the dialectic are all aspects of that experience. They just picked out two. We want all of them because we're dialecticians and we want to get into it in greater depth and really understand what it is. And then Aliyah said, how do we understand it? How do you study that? And didn't we say that understanding, if this is the whole, understanding is how to use its parts to providentially do things? Compare and contrast. What is it the same as? What are the differences? Can you take the experience as a whole, recognize its parts? Compare and contrast, what's it like? What's it unlike? Demonstrating our theory that understanding is the use of the aspects inherent in intelligence itself that can be experienced in divine luminosity. Because we're using it to understand that thing. Compare and contrast. What's it the same as? What's it different? Where's the differences? What's it like? What's it unlike? And likewise to everything on this list that we're developing. It's a win-win.
I'm always good. That is what I stand for, being good all the time.
Yes, all of us stand for that.
Cookie maxing.
And cookie maxing.
What the hell do your goddamned, literally, religious beliefs matter?
Also a good point.
Spit on me.
Emma!
You can be a gooner.
Okay, you can be a goon if the Oracle says so. Why Oracle?
I'm always good. And that is what I stand for, being good all the time.
Me too. That's my philosophy. I stand for being good all the time because I am always good. So you can be a gooner, Emma.
You can be a gooner.
Thank you. Emma?
I've been a bad little girl.
No, you're fine.
I'm cute. Like, it's cutie pie.
That's fine. Too.
Goon, 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 goon.
Calm down, you lot.
Anything for a click, no matter how
Sorry.
stupid or demented or
That was a bit
misleading.
stupid. Oh my goodness. So, wrong button. We go zoom in, and then we zoom out to the text. There we go. So how do we study it? Compare and contrast. Oh, that's how. Aaliyah. Is that how you studied Christianity? Comparatively? Yes. Yes. I had a class at GWC, Golden West College, where Pierre used to teach. I went there once. It was amazing. It was so good. It was so good to be at a college where they talk about this stuff, even if it was just one teacher. Oh, so good though. That is so good. Yes, I had a class at GWC, Golden West College, and we used Alan's synopsis of the four Gospels. Oh my goodness, we got so much homework to do. We got Boltman, we got Maccoby. We've got to read Mark's Gospel to see this peak experience in the middle and see what happens on the other side. We've got to find we've got to read Luke in Acts. We've got to read Paul in Galatians to find out about this transfiguration experience thing, and compare and contrast Paul and Luke, and see whether or not Luke said his mission was given by Ananias. If you wanted to, you could also read about the Mirake Eliad reports of the meditating monks on Mount Anthos. You can find out about Sai Baba's experience. That's not really reading, but you can read up on his light experiences that people claim to have witnessed. Yes, we're looking at the Gospel of Mark to read the stuff about Jesus' peak experience. And now we're reading Alan's synopsis. Got so much fun reading to do with your friends over coffee if you have amazing friends. So Alan's synopsis of the four Gospels. If you want, maybe we'll read them at the end of the book as well, together on stream. Could be fun. We use Alan's synopsis of the four Gospels. Key's study of the Gospels. Okay, another guy. Some more work for us to do. Fun for us to have.
Where's the joy? Where's the whimsy? Where's the childlike wonder?
That's what we have fun with it. And Perrine's intro. Okay, so check out Perrine's, Perrin. Perrin's intro. They were really good works, and we used a workbook the instructor put together. Now, if anyone knows of this workbook, if anyone studied at Golden West College at any time and did Christianity units or comparative religion units, please let us know. And if you would like to share a PDF copy of this workbook or direct us to where we can find a copy, please drop a line, send a comment, send a message on Discord or an email or a comment under the YouTube. It'll be fun to have a look at this workbook. That's what they did to compare and contrast to make sense of that peak experience. Aaliyah, I would like to get into something like that, says Aaliyah. Another thing, are there records of people having had that kind of experience from different traditions? Joseph, reports of those experiences occur from Plato to Tibetan philosophy, from Korean Buddhism to Hinduism, from Chinese philosophy to shamanism, to mention only some traditions. For myself, I find that by studying and reflecting on similar stories, you gain an appreciation of the greatness of the figures who experience them, and insight into the nature of reality, and the need to fashion your own philosophy so that it will be broad enough to contain room for everything that's meaningful. And thankfully, we're in an understanding tradition, meaning you could be able to, with a model of understanding, have a place for every single one of those traditions. It might even be Parmenides' hypotheses. 10 of them now. Maybe. At least, well, understanding offers that potential to understand all of them. But what does it mean to Christianity? Asks Aaliyah. Biblical authorities call that event the parousia, which is interesting because ousia is the Greek word for that very experience, mind knowing itself. Ousia is the capacity that we have to reflect on ourselves, and it's also the name given to the eye of the soul, the sense, like eyes see light, ears hear sound. There's a sense we can awaken by doing what we do here and talking with friends about what we do here. That's the doing the dialectic, of course. That's the sense called the eye of the soul, called ousia, that can grasp the non-physical dimension of reality because it's mind that has the capacity to turn about and minding mind. So ousia is the word we've been using, but they use the word parosivia or parousia. Aaliyah says, I'm not sure what to say. Harry jumps in. Okay. He's getting left out in the cold. Now he jumps in for a while. So I expect, we know what state of mind Harry is in, so we can expect Harry is going to be playing the role in the dynamic of their relationship of the counter-attack from belief, because Aaliyah has been asking some wonderful questions and gaining some insight. Not only insight, she's just gained some direction on how to move forward to make sense of experiences from Plato, Tibetan philosophy, Korean Buddhism, Hinduism, Chinese philosophy, shamanism, and any other spiritual or cultural tradition that has possibility for this experience within their system. So, worth doing, worth understanding all possible spiritual traditions, all possible ways human beings have awoken the eye of the soul and experienced this life-transforming state of being called ousia. Yes, but with as we're learning to be on the quest, one of the principles, we've got 5 so far. First one, insights or spiritual experiences are objects for reflection to develop understanding. That's what she's got, so she's in the game. Expect counterattacks from belief. So with any insight or understanding, or experience, expect a counterattack from belief. Keep your cool as you would expect it, and also address them through midwifery. So, here we have Aaliyah doing great work, rational exploration of ideas with like-minded friends. By the way, that's one of the share your insights from reading with friends who are also in the game on the same journey. That's the third principle. She set for herself a personally meaningful goal, understanding this with excellence. So she's right in the game. So, doing really well. She's got some direction. She's awakening her love of understanding, philodainoia. But of course, with insights or growth or understanding, expect the counterattack. So, we will anticipate Harry is jumping in to personify that very principle, looking at this dialogue itself allegorically. So let's have a quick sneaky look. Harry says something. Harry's going to be a dick. Let's have a look. I'm guessing. You may not be sure, but I am. Okay, already. We know he's being a dick. He's sure. Aaliyah's not sure what to say. That's a state of enlightenment called philosophical ignorance. Stung. Aporia. The word stung comes from when Meno says to Socrates, wow, I'm open, I'm curious, I don't know what to say. Like a stingray has stung my mouth, I can't talk. That's a good state. We've already identified the state of human ignorance isn't not knowing, it's thinking you know shit you don't. That's the role of belief. Why belief is the cause of all human problems. So here is Harry starting off with, I am sure of what to say. You're a dick, Harry.
Like literally suck my dick, dude.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Harry.
I hope he can post more Chinese milking type content slash material.
No, none of that.
Gooners.
You're a gooner.
Gooners.
That's for you for saying Chinese milking?
Gun.
I've been a bad little girl.
Calm down, Emma.
Like literally suck my dick, dude.
Exactly. Back to that. You start out by getting people into comparative religions, just as I thought, and you steer them into philosophy to make everything seem right. Okay, so we were right. And of course, we see Harry and Joseph have a back and forth for a while, so that seems to be in the next section. The anticipated counterattack from belief personified by Harry, because Ellie is doing fantastic work. So, what do you think about all this? Is this interesting? How are your dreams going? Now we've just learned another way of reflection, comparison and contrast. Are you able to apply that to your dreams? Can you compare and contrast states of mind in your dreams, roles in your dreams? If you have more than one scenes, can you see what's same and different about those scenes? Or even collect a whole series of dreams over a few nights. Can you compare and contrast them? That's been our method moving forward. Everything we're learning about reading or understanding or the dialectic, apply them to your dreams. Figure it out. You're developing your own style and method of dialectic, as well as developing a relationship with your own guide, Dreammaker. How are your dreams going? Hope they're going well. You've got a bunch of homework you can do if you've got some free moments, or you've able to have a coffee with some friends and you want something to talk about. Now we might see if we can find these to work through at the end of the text, or you can look at them yourself and not just nail them down for yourself, but test your level of understanding by sharing it with a friend. Get them to buy the coffee, and you can provide a dialectical reflection on what you've discovered. We're making great progress. Isn't this an exciting and meaningful dialogue? Yes. The people say,
Everybody should love sluts. I love sluts.
and we should all love sluts, right?
I think it's awesome.
Exactly. Emma?
Making ice cream's a good and courageous thing.
That's funny.
Okay, I'm getting rid of the ice cream one. But it is funny. We have fun. Even if it's wacky soundboard fun, we still have fun here. So, awesome stuff. Well done. Thanks for joining me. Feel free to join the Discord, follow on Twitch, buy me a coffee if you would like. There's a donation below for that. I don't get any money from this at all. And it's a link to the PDF of what we're reading below. And if you are familiar with someone who did happen to study at Golden West College and has this workbook that we're talking about, please drop me a line and maybe we can get a copy from somewhere. Thanks for joining me. I hope you're having fun. I hope your dreams are interesting tonight. And I will see you in the next one. Thanks for joining me. It's good to see you. I miss your smiling face. This button never works. Follow the logos. Jesus. Follow on Twitch. Have I said that already? Why isn't this button working? Press the button. I hope you're having a good day. Stay hydrated. What? Oh. Okay, it works. I finally got there. Bye.